When you hear the words virtual reality today, you generally think of two things. You either think it's a vast and limitless technology that has tons of room for potential and growth for the purposes of both entertainment or productivity.
Very seductive. You could get hooked on this.
Or you think it's an overly expensive fad that is designed to be yet another pointless accessory for rich people to throw cash at like you do wood on a campfire. A technology which, while cool looking, ultimately only serves the purpose of wowing you for a few minutes before you eventually get sick and tired of looking at a TV screen that's plastered over your fucking face. And that opinion is not one that is invalid or wrong by any means. Before getting my hand on a Rift last year, I viewed VR as nothing more than an expensive fad that offered little of interest to the common consumer, aside from a few tech demos that offered a good 15 or 30 minutes of fun but not much more. The turning point for me and others, however, was the release of Half Life Alyx. From a developer renowned for their innovation and ability to revolutionize some kind of technology with each new release, and the latest game from one of the biggest gaming franchises of all time, which hadn't seen a new release in over a decade. It gave virtual reality a sense of legitimacy and that Valve would be at the forefront of the VR renaissance. But hold the fucking phone a second. Valve may have put forth the first true system seller for VR, but Half Life Alyx certainly isn't the first game to innovate VR and revolutionize a specific aspect of that experience. Boneworks was a huge leap for VR, specifically in regards to physics and gunplay, making objects in your character have weight and dimension. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners experimented a bit in creating an open world survival game for VR, complete with a story the length of other games in the industry, featuring professional voice acting and branching decision making, putting its sandbox and atmosphere as the core focus for its design philosophy. And all three of these are some of the best VR games I've ever played, as they put player agency and the ability to use the nearly unlimited possibilities of virtual reality as its major selling point, which is the very thing that separates VR from its more linear and easily accessible competition in traditional gaming. But if you really want to talk about the unlimited possibilities of VR and its potential, then look no further than the subject of this very video. Blade and Sorcery is an early access arena fighter game which came out in 2018 and was developed seemingly single-handedly by a former modder going by the name of KospY, who became interested in creating his own game after buying an Oculus to play Elite Dangerous, which had opened his eyes to the possibilities of VR. And after years of modding experience under his belt, KospY was eager to develop his own game as a kind of proof of concept, the end result being Blade and Sorcery. The question some of you might be asking is why I'm wasting my breath and time on a video that at the end of the day is a tech demo. How does this push VR, Will? You just run around in a circle killing people. What does this do that other VR games haven't? Well, Mr. Strawman, allow me to enlighten you. Blade and Sorcery is a basic game with a basic premise. You spawn in a room, get some weapons, choose a map, then go beast mode. The thing that makes this not boring is VR's greatest strength, the ability to use your physical body to experiment in ways not intended by the developer. When you play a game like The Last of Us as a random example, Joel is only going to move the way Naughty Dog designed him to. The game can throw bottles into the mix which you can pick up and throw, but you're only going to use those bottles in context that the developers wanted you to use them. Throw them in an enemy's face to stun them or to distract them. Then transition to The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, where bottles ultimately serve that exact same purpose. But by having you be fully in control of your movements, the game opens up and bottles become a much more vital tool depending on your playstyle. Distract enemies, use them to craft, attract for easy kills, or use them as a makeshift weapon when your knife is broken. Point being, Blade and Sorcery's combat and premise can never get old due to you having complete control over the sandbox. Tired of seeing the same animation be repeated over and over again? Well, you are the animation, so you can experiment however you want with the tools and mechanics the developers laid out, which carries over to talking about that sandbox as smoothly as a nice clean beheading. And I think you can expect the kind of things the game allows you to do. You can run, punch, grab items and weapons as well as enemies. And as the game title implies, you can use magic, which in my preferred game version is limited to a lightning attack which can stun enemies. There's also a slow-mo mechanic which can be manually activated to give you some much needed time to think and react. You can climb on any surface provided there's a ledge or something you can latch onto, and you've got telekinesis. Pretty much every VR game I can think of has this kind of mechanic. Even games like Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is meant to be as immersive as possible, has this little feature, albeit in a form that's not as free as Blade and Sorcery's. The reasoning being, when you're playing these games, you don't want to be crouching constantly as it can make the experience uncomfortable or you could accidentally hit something, so it's easier to just will them towards you. Blade and Sorcery takes this idea and it makes it way more interesting than just putting your weapons back into your hands, giving you complete freedom of movement and how you implement it. It's the kind of thing words can't describe and you just have to see or feel it yourself to know how good this aspect feels to use. In the current game version, you have more magic open to you, with the base game giving you gravity, fire and lightning, which you can use to imbue your weapons with different effects. Lightning for stun, fire for piercing leather armor, and gravity for making enemies a lot more weightless. Switching over to the blade part of its namesake, Blade and Sorcery gives the player plenty of weapons to use and master, each playing slightly different from the last. Unlike games such as Boneworks where melee combat feels clunky and like you're wrestling with the game in order to swing a two-handed weapon, Blade and Sorcery gives perfect synergy between its weapons and its player. Each item has its own weight and requires a different playstyle to wield. Daggers are small and facilitate a more up-close and personal playstyle, but can also be easily thrown as well for long-range combat. Two-handed weapons like hammers and claymores are big and need two hands in order to properly control them with slow, deliberate strikes. Swords meet in the middle, being powerful and easy to use, but they still need to be wielded with a consideration of weight. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Blade and Sorcery has the best melee combat I've ever experienced in VR for that very reason, and lays the groundwork for what should be the golden standard in that field. Never before have I played a game where I've had so many options open to me in regard to how I use the sandbox, and that's opened up even more with the game's modding support. As a former modder himself, KospY understood the importance and potential of giving a community the resources and ability to add what they want to the game, and this displays the real potential of not only this game but other potential VR titles that could follow Blade and Sorcery's example. You can mod Blade and Sorcery to be pretty much whatever you want it to be, my favourite being the Outer Rim, a Star Wars overhaul mod that adds lightsabers, blasters, some Star Wars melee weapons, maps, and later updates things like thermal detonators. This combined with the telekinesis and lightning makes for a pretty fun Star Wars fighting game. You can mod in almost any weapon you can think of and achieve the ultimate power fantasy because I am Kratos. You want to be a Spartan? Cool. You want to be Boba Fett? Awesome. You want to earthbend like an avatar? Go for it. The tools are there for you to play the game how you want, so do it. You're not confined to playing it a certain way, and ultimate freedom is given to how you want to experience the game. But let's not kid ourselves here. I know looking at Blade and Sorcery it doesn't seem like much. Despite the game having some of the best melee combat I've seen in a VR title, combat can be quite clunky. And this isn't helped by the AI being stupid as all hell, which makes fighting enemy waves laughably easy. Though the game allows you to set difficulty for waves, to my knowledge all this seems to do is alter the amounts of enemies per wave. But despite the game's issues, I still think it has unlimited potential as an experienced VR title and foundation for future game developers to take notes on and incorporate into their experimentation with virtual reality. KospY seems to have a very clear vision as to where he wants the game to be when it's out of early access, and the modding community around the game seems to share his ambition, constantly posting snippets of what they're working on in the Blade and Sorcery Discord, blowing your mind with the amount of ingenuity and creativity they put into their work, very much reflecting the aspiration of the developer who isn't settling and being content with the already expansive sandbox and player base, planning to add things like randomly generated dungeons, skill trees and a vendor system. There's immense potential here for what was just a simple but enjoyable arena fighting game to transform into a game with branching quest lines and a semi-open world with a deep combat system. And who knows, maybe major modders for the game could either encourage game studios to hire them or build off their work. Modder Kingo64 should be commended for making lightsabers and blasters feel as good as they do, and Disney should take notes in making a VR Star Wars title that reflects the strengths of this mod and the game it's a part of, allowing the player to fuck around and experiment with the world they occupy instead of putting them on rails in a bland, glorified tech demo, which is the potential that Blade and Sorcery capitalizes on, letting its community mess around and use the tools they're given to do what they wish with, and I encourage you all to give it a try. However, this is with the preface that the barrier to entry is rather steep. Though it's a lot more manageable now than it was at the beginning, VR is by no means something that is easy to pick up, as in addition to the headset you must also have a beefy PC in order to run anything in VR. But if you have the money or the tech, absolutely give it a try. To steal a page out of the Owl's book for this conclusion, even if you think that VR or this game isn't worthy of your money, it is most definitely worthy of your time. If you ever have the chance to play in virtual reality, then use that as the determiner for whether or not you should make a purchase. And if you're new to this channel, then use this video as a determiner as to whether or not you give a fuck about my channel. No doubt this video is going to attract some some new fish and interest some old ones. So I feel it's appropriate to state that I appreciate you all for watching this far. Nothing would make me happier to see the comment section filled with feedback and advice as to what I could do to be better. So if you have the time, that would be swell. I also have a Twitter account where I post video updates and assorted bullshits. If you give a fuck about that sort of thing. That's all from me for now, so yeah, see ya.